Everyone, why won't Iran surrender? If we treat Iran as just a dictatorship or like North Korea, we cannot understand the essence of this war. Just as Christianity has the suffering of Jesus on the cross, Shia Islam has the massacre of Karbala. From now on, I will explore the reasons why Iran does not surrender, specifically the Spirit of Karbala. The dazzling fighter jets of the United States and Israel take off, and Iran's air defense system is destroyed in an instant, followed by breaking news announcing Khamenei's death. They even managed to eliminate Iran's leadership all at once. On the surface, it seems like a perfect victory for the United States. However, a war only ends when ground forces enter and take control of the land. During World War II, Germany carried out heavy bombing raids on London with aircraft. The biggest misconception is that simply flying planes and bombing will end the war. During World War II, Hitler turned London into ruins with thousands of bombers, but ultimately failed to subdue Britain because he could not send ground troops across the sea. Historically, there has been no case where a nation was subdued solely by air operations. This is the limitation of air power. You cannot end a war with fighter jets. During the Gulf War, U.S. tank units crossed the desert and entered the heart of Iraq. In contrast, Iran is currently in a position where it needs to cross the sea. To end the war, ultimately the army, that is, ground forces, must go in and plant the flag. During the Gulf War in 1991, the United States prepared for 6 months to strike Iraq and gathered over 500,000 ground troops. The terrain of Iraq was a flat desert, ideal for tanks to maneuver. However, Iran is different. It has more than twice the population of Iraq, and the terrain is also rugged. Public opinion in the U.S. shows a high rate of opposition to the deployment of ground troops. Here, we see the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps holding guns with stern expressions. The red flag, a symbol of revenge, is waving this operation by the U.S. Is not about subduing Iran. It is the worst mistake. The U.S. calculation that removing the leadership would lead to surrender has completely missed the mark. Why can't the U.S. easily bring an end to Iran? Today, we will explore the fatal reasons behind this. Inside Iran, there are many citizens who oppose the theocratic regime, but there are also many who support it. However, if another country attacks, the people will unite. The attack from the United States has brought the divided Iran together. The U.S. Central Command celebrated shortly after the operation, saying, "We have cut off the head of the snake." They thought that by removing the leadership, Iran would collapse. So, if the normal state system collapses, what will be Iran's last card, which is only left with a determination to fight? It's the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the lifeline of the global economy. This is the largest oil transit point in the world, but the actual navigable width of the route that large oil tankers can use is very narrow. If Iran, having lost everything due to U.S. airstrikes, were to say, "Not a drop of oil can leave from here," and sink a few tankers in this narrow strait, or indiscriminately scatter hundreds of mines, what would happen? It would take a considerable amount of time to remove them, and during that time, the global economy would plunge into a Great Depression. In a nutshell, it's you die, I die. It's not that the U.S. doesn't know how to remove dictators like Kim Jong-un of North Korea. It's because of the uncertainty and repercussions that would arise after their removal. The United States has oversimplified the theocratic regime of Iran and the complex puzzle of the Middle East. Now it has become very difficult for U.S. forces to deploy ground troops. So what is the real reason Iran is not surrendering? From now on, we will explore the reasons why Iran is not surrendering and the Spirit of Karbala. This is the scene of anti-government protests in Iran, with women throwing off their hijabs and Iranians cheering the death of the leader, of course. They are also citizens of Iran. In recent years, due to anti-government protests, at least thousands to nearly 10,000 people have lost their lives. It is only natural that the number of people whose anger towards the regime has reached its peak is in the hundreds of thousands. However, there is a side that we cannot see. It is the theocratic system. In Iran, there is a massive support base. that vows to willingly sacrifice their lives for this theocratic system. They are not people who were forced out like those from North Korea. They come out to the streets voluntarily and weep. If we treat Iran simply as a dictatorial state in the Middle East or North Korea, we will not be able to understand the essence of this war. The leaders of Iran hold a completely different kind of power compared to China's Xi Jinping or North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Let's explore the real reason why the Iranian regime never kneels. Even under such strong sanctions and pressure, their Karbala mentality, it is a mistake to simply view Iran's supreme leader Khamenei as a politician. He is a representative of God and a devout person who prays. He is Ayatollah Uzma. He is an enormous religious figure. First, you need to understand the worldview of Shia, which follows Allah, the Prophet Muhammad, the Imams, the Mahdi, and the Ayatollah. They believe that after Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, the Mahdi, who is the Savior of the world, will come. And until that Mahdi arrives, the one who shows and guides the believers to the truth is the Ayatollah. In other words, for the supporters in Iran, the supreme leader is not just a president, but a divine figure leading the world in place of the Savior. The enraged Iranian protesters demonstrated how terrifying this religious connection can be. In 2016, a Shia cleric from a minority region was executed in Saudi Arabia. Despite being a cleric from a marginal area, the relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia deteriorated, causing turmoil throughout the Middle East. Recently, there was an incident in Karachi, Pakistan, where 9 people died after clashing with police while trying to storm the U.S. consulate. In this way, the Shia network transcends borders. If a top-tier Ayatollah Uzma like Khamenei is struck, it is like touching off a massive powder keg that would ignite not only within Iran, but also among Shia Muslims worldwide. From now on, let's explore the heart of Shia Islam, the tragedy of Karbala. An illustration of a battle in an ancient desert with a sandstorm, depicting the solemn figure of Imam Hussein. Then where does the fundamental power that unites these Shia people so strongly, making them fearless even of death, come from? Just as Christianity has the suffering of Jesus on the cross, Shia Islam has the massacre of Karbala. This is the decisive moment that perfectly divided Shia and Sunni, and it is the core story of the Iranian theocratic system. The map of the Islamic Empire. The confrontation between the Caliph and Hussein traces back to the time when Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, resisted the corrupt Caliph of the Islamic Empire. At that time, the people of Kufa in Iraq called for Hussein, but they were known for their betrayal. Hussein's aides tried to dissuade him from heading to Damascus. There are only 72 people following you. Do not trust them. It is a path to death. Hussein with a determined expression. The words Hussein left at that time still bring tears to millions of Shia Muslims today. I am not going there to succeed in a rebellion, nor am I going there trusting them. The current power holder is trampling on Islamic law and justice. If not a single person resists here and now in the future, Muslims will never resist when justice disappears. I set out to empower future Muslims to resist injustice. In the end, Hussein is brutally massacred at Karbala. After that, the Shia were oppressed and forced to flee for hundreds of years, becoming a minority. However, the spirit of willingly becoming a martyr for justice, even knowing he would die, becomes part of the DNA of Shia Islam. The Shia, who had been hiding, held out, saying, "I will not establish a country until the Savior Mahdi comes." Then, about 500 years ago, a figure named Shah Ismail appeared in the region of Iran. He made himself aware as the savior, or a being comparable to him, unified Iran, and forcibly converted the Sunni majority Iran into a Shia state. From this point on, Iran became the center and the leading country of Shia Islam worldwide. Currently, while it is difficult to determine the exact ratio of Shia to Sunni Muslims, it is generally known that Sunnis make up about 90% of the global Muslim population, while Shias account for about 10%. Now, if we apply the story of Hussein's Karbala to modern politics, what thoughts might be in the minds of the current Iranian regime and its core supporters? To them, America, Israel, and the Western world are the caliphs of the fallen Umayyad dynasty, and Iran stands alone as the Imam Hussein who opposes injustice. Surprisingly, the hardline supporters within Iran are not afraid of the threat of war or pressure from the West. Rather, we say this: we have been crying and growing up listening to the story of Hussein's martyrdom since we were young. Now is the right opportunity. On the path that Hussein walked, the glorious day has come when we can also be martyrs together. From the perspective of atheists or followers of other religions, this may sound like the nonsense of fanatics. However, the important thing is that a significant number of the 90 million people in Iran genuinely share this sentiment. And these forces have the weapons and power to control the state. For those who have grown up on such religious and emotional foundations since childhood, will the West's economic sanctions or logic of democracy fully resonate? The Western perspective that hopes for reformists rather than hardliners in Iran is misguided. The reformists in Iran also love Khamenei a little less and are a little less extreme. The fundamental idea that this theocratic system must be maintained is no different. This is not to defend or justify Iran's theocratic system. It is a clear tragedy that countless innocent citizens have been oppressed and sacrificed. If we simply dismiss the Iranian regime as an irrational dictatorship and ignore their Karbala spirit, we will never understand why Iran does not surrender. If external forces attempt to invade Iran with ground troops, even citizens who usually harbor discontent towards the regime may temporarily set aside their grievances and choose the path of martyrdom against foreign powers. This is the real reason why the Western world cannot easily bring down Iran. That's all for today's story. If this helped you understand the situation in Iran, please subscribe, like, and set notifications. I will return with stories that will broaden your perspective next time. Thank you.